Good morning again, and welcome. This morning we're going to hear from Q. He's Director of Offensive Security of Blue Bastion Security and specializes in healthcare security and penetration testing. He's conducted hundreds of penetration tests in small to large environments with a focus on networks and web application testing. His area of interest include healthcare, security, Active Directory, cybersecurity policy, and the quote-unquote dry business side of hacking. Q is a penetration test lead during the day and a teacher in the after hours. He's presented and taught at cybersecurity conferences, including BSides and Black Hat on offensive security topics. Welcome, Q.
Thank you. Thank you all. As I was talking about it, I hope we don't get sued for using the Cookie Monster, but we'll see. So if that happens, I asked ChatGPT to draw me a hash monster, and this is what it drew. It's like, all right, whatever, I'll use that. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm Q from Blue Bastion, and a lot of my focus has been in Active Directory, and I also teach a lot. So when I go through these topics, some of these are very technical. I'm going to try not to be too technical intentionally. I'm not trying to go down into the rabbit holes of which encryption is being used and which ciphers are being used, because in the end, it doesn't really matter when you're attacking or when you're defending. How many times have you been able to convince Microsoft to use a specific cipher, right? So we're gonna talk about the methodology. I'll be demonstrating some of the attack techniques, and then we'll talk about some of the defense mechanisms and some deception you can do. And the goal here is to speak to NetNTLM hashes, right? Or sometimes you'll read that as NTLM. Microsoft uses both interchangeably quite often. I prefer to refer to authentication over the network using NTLM to be NetNTLM. Kind of makes it clear. And when authentication is happening on the box itself, NTLM. In the end, it's NTLM package that's being used in the back end to perform authentication. So let's first talk about what the protocol is, whose hashes we are stealing, whose hashes we're gobbling up. So NetNTLM came out of the need for, if you have a need to go and access a file share, the file share should not have your hashes or your password. You want to access Exchange, it should not have your hashes or your password. So how do you authenticate to them? This is where the challenge response mechanism comes into play. If I want to access a file share, I am going to start the negotiation. The file share says, well, I don't have your hash, I don't have your password, so why don't you take the challenge I'm giving you? In this case, it usually is the current timestamp. So here's the current timestamp. Why don't you encrypt that using your hash, your NT hash or LM hash, depending on the version of NetNTLM, right? So encrypt the current timestamp with your password hash and send it back to me. So we'd say, okay, here we go. I just encrypted it. Here is the current timestamp encrypted with my hash that only I should know and maybe the domain controller should know. The file share then takes that to the domain controller to verify. Hey, domain controller, Qasim just gave me this encrypted package. There's a response to my challenge. He encrypted the current timestamp with his hash. Can you verify this is truly him? And the domain controller should have my hash. Otherwise, we got a bigger problem there. And the domain controller responds back and tells the file share, yeah, I was able to decrypt it. Looks like a timestamp, so it must be him. So we can start talking at that point, all right? There are a few issues with this. And Microsoft is talking about getting rid of it, or at least phasing it out, just like they phased out SMBv1. I know that's still around. Any of you who are sysadmins, you still see that. But it's going to be around for a bit. And it's a really fun protocol when you are an attacker. There's a lot of opportunity here for you to obtain these hashes. So just real quick, going through this again, Make sure we're on the same page before I move on. The file share does not have your hash or your password, but you want to talk to it. So you send it current timestamp encrypted with your hash. It then sends that to the domain controller to verify, because domain controller has your hash. And once the domain controller confirms it was valid, then you can talk to the file share. Then you can access the files. You'll see two types of these protocols, NTLM v1 or NetNTLM v1 and NetNTLM v2. If you see NetNTLM v1, you are likely still using LM hashes. You should not be doing that, right? Some of you are RIT students, so you might get this more than those of us who are from MCC. Did I just make fun of my own alma mater? So LM hashes had the maximum length of 14 characters. These were XPN before, okay? So 14 character maximum length, and then it would break that password into 2 blocks of 7, uppercase everything, and then it would encrypt and hash. So one, with the LM hash, you already broke that length down to 7. Instead of me having to crack a 14-character password, I'm now cracking 2 7-character passwords, which is exponentially easier. Then it uppercased everything. So it doesn't matter you had an uppercase character, lowercase character, it was all the same. So we used to have a lot of fun with cracking LM hashes, and you'll still see those right now. The only reason sometime you'll get away with an LM hash and not get it cracked is because pen testers may not know how to crack it anymore. Right? This is the same way a lot of IBM boxes, IBM mainframes don't get hacked because some of us don't know how to hack it, so we just move on to the Windows file shares. The NetNTLM v2 is NT hash only. Okay? So NetNTLM v2 is what you should be seeing in your network. If you run a Wireshark capture, you can see some of this. Now, we talked about what NetNTLM hashes are. I want to get into how to grab them. How to, in the network, grab some NetNTLM hashes. And yeah, that was ChatGPT, and I did not put much effort into it. So, my most favorite method for this, the most common one you'll see, it's so common that we make fun of this in the pen testing communities. Okay? Broadcast multicast name resolution protocol. In the college, we're taught if you want to authenticate to something, if you want to find out where a certain share or a box is, you just ask the domain name server, the DNS. That's not true. Windows, Mac, Linux, they send out a broadcast and a multicast name resolution. Instead of me asking right now, hey, where is Dr. Ullman? Instead of asking one person, I'm asking everybody. Same way with this. Everybody in the network that can get layer 3 traffic is getting that name resolution. Hey, do you know where that HR share is? So the first one to respond wins. Hopefully this is actually HR file share that responded. And what they respond, we authenticate over NetNTLM. Kerberos can also be used, but most likely we'll do NetNTLM because we prefer that in the Windows world. Also, as an attacker, if I am pretending to be HR share, I can enforce, use NetNTLM with me. There's even ways if the client, the user in this case, their workstation supports NetNTLM v1, I can also enforce that too. So, broadcast multicast, I'm asking everyone in the network, do you know where this file share is? And first one to respond, I do NetNTLM authentication. If you pull up Wireshark, you'll see a lot of this traffic. NetBIOS name service, NBNS, is the broadcast name resolution protocol. Then you have 2 multicast ones, LLMNR and MDNS. Okay? There's only one reason I love Macs. And that is, I'm sitting at Starbucks or any sort of a public network, and I pull up Wireshark, I'll see Qasim's notebook, or Qasim's MacBook, Samantha's iPhone, right? And I can just start yelling, hey, Samantha, and just like look down, and freak them out. So your printers, your IoT, like Google Cast, Apple TV, are going to do a lot of MDNS. Windows 10 and 11 also do MDNS. Most likely in Windows networks, though, you're going to see NBNS, NetBIOS Name Service, and LLMNR. You're also seeing in this Wireshark capture WPAD. Who knows what WPAD is? We got one person, two people. Do you use WPAD? Three people. Do you use WPAD?
Most people don't know if they use it.
Exactly. Well, most people don't use it. That's the crazy part of it. They don't have anything set up to serve that. This is, you spin up IE, and IE wants to know, where is my proxy server? Who do I proxy through for my corporate proxies? That is this. So every morning, whenever I start my pen test, I like to make sure I'm listening for this at 9 a.m. People are coming in, their workstations are doing the name resolutions, and I'm going to see that kind of stuff. Okay? So lots of traffic like that happens. The workstation is doing this, the server is doing this, the user has no idea this is happening. What happens then? Well, on the left side, somebody tried to look for the HR share in a Windows box. It doesn't matter if it exists or not. That's the crazy part. Windows will do that resolution even if that name exists or does not exist, because it's happening in parallel with the DNS. There's a request being sent to the DNS server, and there's a request being sent to broadcast, multicast, basically everybody in the network, on every single network adapter you have in parallel. Okay? So if you're connecting to VPN, there's a possibility that the broadcast multicast name resolution is also happening on the VPN, even though what you're looking for is on your internal network. Right? If you are connected to virtual networks, like a virtual box or something, and your corporate network, the resolution happens on all of those networks. All adapters, every device in the vicinity is getting that. On the right here, what you see in the terminal is a tool called Responder. There are a few tools that will exploit this. Responder is sort of a staple. This is a Python tool, and what this is doing is it's responding and saying, hey, I am the HR share you're looking for. Okay? You see the, on the top, poisoned answer sent to MDNS, NBNS, LLMNR. It responds and says, hey, I am who you're looking for. Come and talk to me. And then you see the box's name is parent workstation, the user is Vagrant, and then we have their hash. That highlighted area, the yellowish, orangish area, that is the hash. Just by responding, saying, I am the share you're looking for, we get their hash. Okay? There's times when this may not work very well. Most likely, it's because you were not the first to respond. If you're troubleshooting, responder not working, you are poisoning things, you're not getting anything back, it's because you either are not first to respond, or there's times when microsegmentation tools will stop that. So we also have a blue team, and our blue team deploys a microsegmentation tool, and I hate it. As a pen tester, I hate it. Because I think I've got something, and then it kicks in and goes, oh no, you should not be doing that. So it stops that. But anyway, most likely, this is how we're getting domain admin. There is a deployment tool that I shall not mention the name of. It is used to find new devices in the network, inventory them, log on to them, and make sure they have the right configuration and right tools according to your organization's policy. Well, if in order for this tool to do that, it needs to be always looking for new devices, and then it needs local admin on those devices. If you don't know which device that's going to be, you're likely going to give that tool domain admin. So it's happened at least twice this year where we just pulled up Responder and right away we got the domain admin hash from this tool. Because it saw our device pop up, it's port 445, it thought it was Windows, tries to log in, we say yes, give me the hashes, and we get domain admin. So by listening, you can do a lot too. You don't always have to respond. Broadcast multicast name resolution, though, you'll respond to that. Then there is coercion. Ask nicely. Petit totem is an example of that. Right? Basically, hey server, I want you to access this file from my file system. The server goes, oh, okay, I'll come and do that. Oh, hold on. If you want to access file from my file server, you must authenticate first. We're asking the server to talk to us. And then we're saying, hey, if you want to talk to us, you must authenticate. All right? So server is very gullible in this case. Social engineering. Ask the user to just CD to your file share, which is your responder server. So / your IP address, or netuse / your IP address. There are a few other things you can do. A lot of times you will see, especially with a new patch, when Microsoft patched Petit Potem, the patch basically said you cannot do the coercion as an unauthenticated user. What we were doing was we would walk into the network and we would ask the domain controller to talk to us and then obtain its hashes. Microsoft patched that. You can no longer do it without authentication. So the moment you get a domain user's hash or a domain user's credential, you can still do Petit Potem with those credentials. You will also see Microsoft Exchange is a member of Exchange subsystem, which by default, before 2016, was a member of administrators group in AD. So you Petit Potem Exchange server. You use the tool Petit Potem, there's coercion, there's a few different tools. Using a credential, you ask the Exchange server to come and talk to you. You get its hash, and you go to the domain controller now. Because the Exchange server is a member of a group that's a member of admins, Exchange server is domain admin. So using this method, you can get NetNTLM hashes from Windows servers, Windows workstations, if you have domain user credentials. Okay? It's a gift that keeps giving. So let's use Responder. So I'm not connected to the network. Both my VMs, my Windows VM and my Linux VM are on the same virtual network. So don't get excited. All right, so on the Linux side, on Kali Linux side, I'm going to use the tool Responder, and I'm going to ask it to listen on Ethernet 0, my default network interface. All right, what's it done? It has spun up quite a few different servers. So if somebody does talk to us on any of those protocols, we'll be able to coerce them. But most importantly, the poisoners. It is poisoning LLMNR, NetBIOS name service, MDNS, DNS. It can poison DHCP also, because remember, DHCP, the initial request is a broadcast request. IPv6 DHCP also is a broadcast, which you can use MITM6 tool for. If the client has IPv6, or if they don't know if they have IPv6, meaning they have IPv6, you can use MITM6 in there to get pretty easy NetNTLM hashes. So we're poisoning LLMNR, MDNS, both on multicast name resolution, and NetBIOS name service. Responder is listening. On the other side, on Windows, I'm just going to do something like netuse, let me talk to something. I think I gotta do / on this. There you go. There's a hash. The user has not provided anything. I have not provided my credentials. What I provided, what the workstation in the background provided, did not work. So it's now Responder says, hey, do you want to give me something else? In reality, though, Responder already got my hash. Okay? Responder has already received my NetNTLM hash. Look at the protocols that Windows sent. It sent an MDNS request and an LLMNR request. Because Windows 11 and Windows 11 doesn't always send NetBIOS name service request. Okay? But either way, I had two choices in there. Not only did it send it, both of them, it sent them multiple times. Look at how many different answers were responded to, including IPv4 and IPv6. Windows does not want you to be lost. It wants to ask everybody on every single IP protocol on every single network interface. So now we have the NetNTLM hash. What do we do with it? Actually, before I move on to that, there's another one I want to talk about. This is my favorite when it comes to phishing, or when it comes to any sort of access I already have on the network. So think about a Windows shortcut. What I've demonstrated to you already, if you get the user to come to you and you're running responder, you'll get NetNTLM hashes. If you have a shortcut sitting in a file share, call it HR, call it finances, call it CEO's salary, somebody double clicks it, and it points to your file share, your responder, you get their hash. But the problem is you have to get somebody to double click that shortcut for them to get to you. Except, what if it wasn't the shortcut that got them to you, it was the icon file for the shortcut. You tell Windows to load the icon for that shortcut from your box running responder. The moment the user goes to that folder, they haven't even clicked on the shortcut, they've done nothing with it, just happen to be in that folder, you get their hash. Because Windows tried to load the icon for that shortcut, okay? So this is an example of that. This is an SCF file. SCF no longer works on 11. L and K files still work on Windows 10, Windows 11. So it doesn't matter what the command is, doesn't matter where we are taking the user. In the end, it is the icon file property that matters. If the icon is loaded from my box, the user will end up on my box, and I will get their NetNTLM hash if I'm running Responder or a similar tool on the other end. Okay? And you can do that with a tool called Slinky. It's part of CrackMap exec. So what I'm doing is on the top, I'm saying use the module Slinky. I'm giving it some sort of credentials. This user has write access to the folder files. So because it has write access, it's going to deploy that link file with the icon pointing to you. So what I like to do is whenever I have the any sort of user credential, I'm going to spray the whole network because I'm doing pen testing. I'm not doing red teaming. I don't care about being stealthy at that point. So I'm accessing every single file share. Wherever I have write access, Slinky will deploy that file. So your most common file shares, somebody goes to that file share, end up getting the hash. Oh, my alarm. So let's do a demo of that. And then we get to my favorite way of doing this. Okay. So my Windows box is on 10.2.11.55.5. I'm going to use the user of test, password of test. Let's see if that works. I kind of forgot. I think it's test something. Oh yeah, that works. Great. Now, which shares exist on this box? Dash dash shares. There are a few different shares. I don't have access to any for writing except for the share. There's a share called share that I have read and write access to. So what I'll do is I am going to use Slinky with option, name, we'll call it something. It doesn't have to be something great. Something you need to think about when it comes to deploying this file is you want it to be in that first sort of the scroll page of that folder. So the user doesn't have to scroll down to get to your file. Windows will not load the icon until the user sees that file somewhere. So you may do @1, that will end up usually be on the top. You'll do dot something, or just number 1, or A, something like that. I'm just going to call it Q for now. And then which server is this going to come back to? What is your IP address? Because once the user sees it, you want them getting to you. So what is the IP you want to embed in that file for the icon? Well, let's find out. Okay, so Slinky is going to run. Are you sure you want to do this? This is not OPSEC safe. You'll get caught. Yeah. Although I don't know how many organizations are looking for LNK files. What may get me caught is authenticating to a box from a Linux device, from a device that's not been seen before, or what I usually do, which is I'll have a /24 in my target, so the whole subnet. That should get you caught, right? If it doesn't get you caught, you got a bigger problem. So LNK file has been dropped on the share. Now I need to listen. I'll do responder for that again. And I'm going to do analyze mode, which is just listen, don't respond. Because in this case, they're talking to us. We don't have to poison them. They're coming to us. On their end, I am going to open up File Explorer. This is the user. There is that my file there, Q. And let's give it a minute. Another thing I'm seeing in here is Microsoft is, I'm not sure what MCC TCP means, but there's some additional requests already happening without doing anything in the back end. I don't know, go to C. It is in share. This is where it is. So it's already got the hash, but you'll see it says skipping previously captured hash because it's already seen it. The responder is not reoccupying your real estate with the new hash. But the user went to the folder. I did not click on that file. I was simply in the same folder. And Windows said, well, the icon must be loaded from this file share. So let me go to the file share and load the icon. And that got us the hash. Now, this is my, well, one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites in this. Tracking pixels in emails are a pretty common thing. Marketing does it. Right? You get a tracking pixel that loads an empty pixel or a 1x1 pixel from the marketing company's website. They get that GET request. They know you open the email. Well, what if the tracking pixel was a UNC path, the // path? You can get NetNTLM hash. We were having a hard time with this client. We weren't getting anything. And we were talking to our point of contact, and he said, do whatever you want to do. Be that malicious attacker. Just don't hit somebody. All right, so no $5 wrench attacks. So okay, we can do that. So we sent him, every time we do the pen test, every morning we're going to send a start email. Here is my IP address I'm coming from. Here is the time I'm going to be running this test. Here are some of the activities I will perform. So one, you know that it's me and it's not an attacker. You don't start an incident response. And two, if you want to go and look for me, if you want to train your blue team, you have the indicator. And then end of the day, we send a stop email. I've stopped testing. You can go sleep now. So in the start email, we put a tracking pixel for him. And not only was the email going to our point of contact, it went to the whole security team. So we got the whole security team's NetNTLM hashes. Right. Recent testing, we did this with phishing. Some ISPs block port 445. Or sometimes, depending where the user is, their firewall at home or their firewall in the corporate network may block port 445. So then it may not work. But still, if you're on the internal network already, then it will work great too. Yeah?
Yeah, the other client will also sometimes block tracking pixels.
Yeah.
Does it work because it's locally, or do they need to accept the download message?
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, just how does this interact with the Outlook behavior that
Oh.
tracking pixels?
So Outlook, I don't know if the new version is by default. Maybe the new version is by default disabling the images. In that case, in the email, you got to write something that gets them to see that image, all right? So maybe if I was sending an email to my point of contact, I would say, look, I got something. And then it would say, well, the image is not showing. Let me take a look at that. I get that hash. Okay? On that note, Microsoft Word, that will come into play in that. It has ActiveX controls. You can drop a Windows Media Player window into a Word document. So imagine you're phishing somebody and you say, hey, here is your security awareness training. You got to play this video to watch it. The way that works is, it's kind of hard to see in this, but I do have slides up on my GitHub, and I'll give you the link at the end. And you have to enable the developer tab on your end. And this only works against Windows. I have not seen it work against Mac. In the developer tab, which you can open, go to File, Options, Ribbon, and open the developer tab. Click on ActiveX controls, more controls. You pick Windows Media Player. There's quite a few different ones. There's even RDP, there's Forms. I use Windows Media Player. And then it lets you point the URL. Where is that video being loaded from? It used to be that the moment the document was opened, Windows would do that request. Now you have to get them to click play, which again, you make it juicy enough, they will click play. And once they click play, Windows is loading it from your server. Okay? Most recent one, I think it was last year, Outlook reminder audio, the ding, you could tell it to load that from your server. You could do something similar in Teams. In fact, anytime you can provide a UNC path, the / path, you can get NetNTLM hash. Right? So I'm sure there's quite a few other applications in Windows where that is possible. I want to see if it's possible with QR codes. That'd be interesting. All right, so we got the hashes. How do we utilize them? Well, my most favorite method in here, by default, in Windows, even Windows 11 today, it's going to start in, I think, one of the newer versions, start requiring SMB signing. But by default, SMB signing is not required. The domain controllers since 2016 have required SMB signing, right? So if SMB signing is not required, once you obtain that hash from one user, you just go to everybody else and you say, hey, I am Qasim. Talk to me. I'm Qasim. Talk to me. Here's my hash. Here's my hash. Because you can skip the whole negotiate phase, and you can go straight to step 3, which is, I have this hash. This is me. I promise. Let's talk. It's like you stole somebody's badge, pretended to be them, and just because it does not have the picture, you were able to pretend to be them. So SMB signing, you grab somebody's hash, NetNTLM hash, one of the many ways we talked about, and you just talk to anybody who does not require SMB signing, and you become them. Okay? Then the other method, just crack it. You can get a pretty good hash rate nowadays. This M2 Mac Air was 3,000 mega hashes per second, 3 billion with a B guesses per second. At that point, it's just a matter of time. Most of your users are still using 8 character hashes, maybe up to 12. It's gonna be a pretty good time, okay? So how do we fix this? You can light a match, you can do that, but maybe we don't want to do it. Microsoft is talking about getting rid of NetNTLM or phasing it out. It's going to take a while. You're still going to continue to see NetNTLM. Windows 11 later versions are going to make Kerberos more of a preferred protocol for authentication. Kerberos has its own issues, but it's much better than NetNTLM. Although, the way they're doing Kerberos, the way they make it possible to use Kerberos over NetNTLM may make it a bit more vulnerable. We'll see. The reason we have NetNTLM is because you don't always have a direct line of sight to domain controller. You're not always talking to the domain controller. You're talking to a file share or something else. They don't have your hash, so they go and authenticate on your behalf. They take your encrypted packet, they take the timestamp you encrypted with your NT hash, and they go to the domain controller on your behalf. So what Microsoft is doing is with Kerberos, they're going to have an extension that works as a proxy. So you don't have a direct line of sight to the domain controller, to the KDC, Kerberos Distribution Center, which generally runs a domain controller. They're going to allow that proxy on the other file share or server to do that on your behalf. So whenever I think proxy, I think, huh. And it's also Microsoft, so you know there's going to be some fun to be had with them. What they have recommended in the meantime is you start auditing which of your applications are using NetNTLM. And you can enable that using group policy. And by doing so, you'll know who is using NetNTLM. And once they start failing, you'll have sort of an inventory who is still using it. Because quite often, there will be applications that will have it hard-coded. Even a lot of Microsoft's own applications and operating system components have it hard-coded. So right now, they're working through getting rid of that and have Kerberos be the default for those components. Same thing will happen with the apps, which will take a while. I think we'll still have NetNTLM for a long time, though. Required SMB signing. Just because there are a million ways to get the NetNTLM hash doesn't necessarily mean it is the end of the game, right? Because I still have to either take it to somebody and authenticate as you, because I stole your hash, I have to relay it to somebody, which requiring SMB signing will get rid of. Or I have to crack it, but if you have a strong password, NetNTLM v2 hashes, Windows is NT hashes, you have the ability to set a 256 character password. I've done that to kind of test it out. Then I couldn't get back into Windows because I forgot what the password was. But you can do it. So you can have a 256 character password. Well, kind of hard to remember that. Do a 16 character passphrase. Look around the room, pick 4 to 6 different objects, and use that as your passphrase. Just do not use that horse battery staple password from XKCD, because we did have an IT person in a client side use that as their password. I was just talking to them yesterday, and I was like, yeah, we had a user do that. And he goes, yeah, man, that was me. It was a fun client call. So require SMB signing. And require signing, which SMB v3 really is encryption. It's not signing anymore. On Active Directory Certificate Services, you can require EPA, Extended Protected Authentication, and HTTPS, which enforces that encryption and signing too. Because what happens is, if you are requiring SMB signing everywhere, I can no longer relay that hash to an SMB service. So what do I try then? LDAP. I can try to relay that hash to LDAP. So you require LDAP signing. I can relay that hash to Active Directory Certificate Services. So you require signing there. Require signing or disable services you don't need. Quite often, the clients have ADCS, Active Directory Certificate Services, but we end up finding out they don't need it. Or, once you've done all that, deception. Send out broadcast, multicast name resolution requests on purpose and see who responds. Because the one responding to that is the attacker in your network, and you've just caught them. So I've got a crappy tool that I wrote that I put it up there if you want to use it, NetBait, the link's in there. It does that. It will send out a deceptive broadcast multicast name resolution, and it will tell you if somebody responded. It will drop that in Event Viewer also. What I also wrote in that was the ability to also provide credentials. If the attacker, if the responder tool responds to you, give them some credentials to crack. And you make that password long enough, it will take them a while to crack it. The whole idea is slow down the attacker, waste our time. Right? So that's it. The slide deck will be at my GitHub, github.com/#infosec, because I couldn't come up with a cooler name. Any questions? Yeah, make it easy.
I had a situation, a couple of pen tests ago where the domain controller itself didn't have SMB signing enabled. And I know by default, it should have it enabled.
Yep.
I didn't get a good idea from the client of why they did that. In your mind, what would be the reason for why that would be there? And I noticed that on several of their other files servers, and actually a lot of their really important servers, but they had it enabled on all of their clients.
But not on the DC.
Good answer. For why?
Yeah, so you had a scenario where the client did not have SMB signing required on the domain controller when by default it should be required now. It's happened to me 3 times in the last 12 months, and I also do not have an answer. Other than maybe somebody was troubleshooting something. Quite often, the vulnerabilities we see are a result of somebody was troubleshooting something. For example, the domain users group provided generic all rights to default domain controllers group policy. They did not know why that happened while somebody was troubleshooting something. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was strange too.
Yeah, yeah.
So if everything's correctly functional on the network, the other tools like your XDR, NDR, EDR should be picking up on this activity, correct?
That's interesting. Yes and no. Your relay of hashes, most of your EDRs are not going to pick up. That is where your SIM comes into play. Why is Qasim talking to 50 devices within a minute? EDR is not going to pick up. There will be authentication event, but each box has one authentication event. That does not look too weird to that box, to the EDR client on that box. Now, if you do something with that hash, if you try to dump LSAS, SAM, you try to laterally move, then the EDR comes into play. But just that authentication itself, EDR has no idea. Because EDR is just seeing it on that one host in itself. Yeah.
So it's going to map MITRE ATT&CK or whatever framework you're using for your SIM.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll do a talk about MITRE one day, about what I think about it. Because us pen testers, we don't use it. Hackers don't use it. Anyway, sorry, what were we talking about? Any other questions? All right, yeah.
How often are you using the proxy auth flag while using responder? I find success with that a lot, especially if LLMNR is disabled.
Yeah, so proxy auth and responder. I have not used that. I'll check it out. What I do use, so the tool that you use to relay hashes, the tool that is being used right here to take the NetNTLM hash from .3 and taking it over to .4 to log on is NTLM RelayX. With that, if you use NTLM RelayX, check out SOCs flag. SOCs will allow you to then authenticate everything through that relay. So you are not just one and done relay. That will stay open, and you'll be able to authenticate and send tools through it.
Gotcha.
All right. Last question. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. My slide deck's there. My LinkedIn is there. I'm not on Craigslist. Thank you.